I want to take a quick moment to provide a bit of a warning for the next episode here. We're going to get into some pretty heavy topics that include things such as domestic violence, suicide, and we also will provide some resources for people to reach out to as needed. I just want to let you know ahead of time, in case you got some young listeners or sensitive listeners, to just be ready and make yourself at home. Welcome back to the At-Homish podcast, creating spaces where we belong. So happy that you have chosen to listen to us once again. Oh my gosh, I so appreciate you. I have the honor of having two wonderful guests with me here today, and I'm going to go ahead and toss it off to them to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, thanks so much for having us, Will. My name is Laurie Barbosa. I'm always struggling to introduce myself because people always go with titles first, right? And it's like, but who are you really? So I guess I would have to say, even though it's a title, I am a mom to a 24-year-old daughter named Isabel. I work for the city of Marysville in the engineering department. I've been with the city for 20 years. I've been working in the public sector for 20 years within my community. I live in Marysville as well. I also do community outreach work. I'm on the board of two foundations, nonprofit organizations. And I also volunteer extensively with both. The first one is Millennium Ministries, which is located in Everett, Washington. And they primarily do social justice and equity work, housing advocacy, overcoming adversity. They provide classes for clients on how to overcome adversity and thrive. Mm-hmm. They call it the Surviving to Thriving courses. And I coordinate the food distribution program called Bless the Block, where we go out once a month and distribute groceries to the community, to families in need. We take them to their doorstep, which breaks down that barrier of accessibility because a lot of families can't get to food banks as great as they are. There's a lot of barriers to getting to the food banks, including current policies right now where immigrant families are afraid to go and seek those resources. So we take it to their doorstep. And the other foundation I work with is with Jonathan Yepes Cariño, which is called the Overcoming Adversity Cariño Scholarship Foundation. And we are primarily creating scholarships for students, high school students, whose legal status prevents them from applying for federal financial aid or certain scholarships. And that's basically what I do.
All right.
Hi, I'm Erica Knapp. I've been a Snohomish County resident for about 30 years of my life. I'm a spouse. I'm a mom of 3 boys. I'm on the school board in Arlington, Washington. So that's where I've been living for almost 20 years. And I'm an artist and I volunteer in the community kind of just wherever is needed. But I am on the Arlington Arts Council and I'm a runner. So I am involved with the Arlington Runners Club. And I just started a part-time job with the ARCO Snohomish County and a college student. So Laurie and I just finished our bachelor's in human services and I'm going to start on my graduate degree in the fall. And I'm a dog person for sure.
Okay. Wow. I appreciate the introduction from both of you because I think it really embraces our intersectionality. There's so many different aspects of your identity, between being recent college graduates, being parents, being community members. I mean, you're Arlington, you're Marysville, we're in Snohomish. So it's like there are things that are, absolutely different about us. If you saw us, you'd know that. But it's like all these different things. It's just so amazing. And so I am curious about like how we got into some of these different roles that we're in. Because from what I'm hearing from both of you and even my experiences with you, you're both very, very community oriented. Like, is that something that has always been a part of your life or how did you get into that?
So I was born in Arlington. And at 4 years of age, we moved down to California. My parents and my siblings, we moved down to California, my brother at the time. And then we moved back in 94. And when I started working with the city, there's 2 people that were primarily the reasons why I came into volunteering. One of them is Tara Mizell. She's the director for the Parks Department. And the other one is Patricia DeMel. She used to work as an evidence specialist for the Marysville Police Department. So both of them are Marysville employees, or one is retired now. And it started with doing the food fundraisers every year for Christmas, right?
Okay.
So around Thanksgiving time, and I would take my daughter. She was 4 at the time. So Isabel grew up with the city. And so she would tell police officers, if you see me, don't give me a ticket because I grew up here. So both of them were pivotal in getting me to see the importance of getting out into the community. Okay. And then I passed that on to Isabel as well, to Isa. From there, it moved into through church. I go to church home, and through their Uplift program, I was connected to Millennium Ministries. And it was during the Ukrainian war when my very first time that I went out, the war had just happened. And one of the residents that we took groceries to was a Ukrainian man. And he was watching the news from, his big TV had the news from home. And I remember when he saw us, he just cried.
Oh, wow.
And so our group asked if they could pray over him. And he said yes. But they were praying over him. He was praying over us in Ukrainian. And it was just a moment that just like a core memory, like we always talk about core memories. And that one was a core memory because it just showed how you can create community even by being so different. Like we couldn't understand what he was saying, but you could feel the love, right? And the appreciation. I just stayed on doing service like that. I believe in serving my community. I believe we all have abilities to contribute to serve others. One of my favorite scriptures is Luke. And I don't know what part of this because I'm not that big into the Bible, so no one come at me. But it's the one that says, to whom much is given, much is required.
Okay.
And for me, that means, we all have talents. We all have gifts. And we don't hold on to them. They're given to us to share with others, right? Because we have the capacity to do so. Some people have the ability to donate financially. Some people have the ability to walk around to the community like I do and knock on doors and hand out groceries. Some people, they have the intelligence, like if they're lawyers or therapists, to go out and volunteer that time. So for me, that's the importance of being out there. And what drives me is that we all have the ability to do something, even if it's something small, but it has the ability to change the trajectory of someone's life, then that's a gift to both of us, right?
Yeah, we can all make a difference. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Erica.
Yeah. So like a little bit about my origin story is that my family was in a cult from the time I was 7 till I was 25. So I left when I was 25. And it's not the big one in Arlington that everybody knows. It's a different one.
Okay.
But we were pretty much separate from society. So my upbringing was like, the world is scary. Anybody outside of this group is scary. So when I got out, I thought, I'm just going to be fiercely independent. Like I'm going to be on my own. I didn't want to be involved with a group of any people ever again because I'd been hurt a lot. It was a lot of abuse. And so then I started a business in Snohomish, Avenue D. It's, a pet grooming business. Because again, I love animals, right? And I had a passion for working with animals. But there's 2 ends to the leash. And that's what I always taught my employees, right? It's like I learned that we all have a part in community. And I think as a business owner, I realized like I really felt a place in community and I really enjoyed that. And I really liked giving back. So it was a way where it was like animals were my safe place, but to still be involved in community. So then let's think here. I kind of just slowly started getting more and more involved. And I had to leave that business because of, having kids and health issues and things like that. So then looking at the Arlington community, I really didn't feel a sense of involvement too much until COVID, actually. And then we're all Zooming, right? And because I was a mom at home with young kids, I hadn't really been getting out in the community, only if it was kid-oriented things. But the city started offering bystander training classes and they started offering book studies and we could all Zoom and I could sit there and be with my kids and I wouldn't have to worry about their behaviors bothering anybody or anything like that. I could fold laundry and listen to a bystander training or a book study. And then that's when everybody in the community started putting meetings on YouTube. So like school board meetings, city council meetings, all these meetings that I never had access to before just because life was limiting with little toddlers. And I was like, wow. Then I really got a sense of what was going on in the community. And I feel like it was kind of this slow snowball at first with owning a business and kind of feeling like, okay, this is cool, but like still safe with my dogs all around me, to like during COVID, I met some people, over Zoom who were like, this is cool. Like we all think together. Could we do something together? Could we, like have community events and finding like-minded people? And then I remember my friend texted me and was like, there's an opening on the school board. And I was like, don't you need to be like qualified for that? Like,
are you not qualified?
So yeah, she was like, you are qualified and here are the reasons why, which, public positions is half and half, like as far as people welcoming you into society. Sometimes not everybody's going to agree with me, which is okay. But I think I felt empowered because I had formed some really like deep friendships and relationships and found those like important landmarks in the community that I knew were safe places. So it was like, I know if I'm having a hard time, here's where my friend lives, and I can just like go to her house and be like, this is happening. But even though I've never really had to do that, but it's just knowing that there are people in this community. It wasn't like a vague, I don't know who anybody is here, So I guess now it's kind of like, I don't know. I really feel happy with the connections that I've made, and even people who maybe we don't see eye to eye, but we can still have respectful conversations. And I'm able to truly like express myself in a certain way that it's not the urgency. It's just like, this is who I am. Yeah. And because we've formed like those strong bonds.
The safety nets.
Yeah, for sure. Those safety nets are super important. So.
Well, I know that's something I've covered maybe a couple episodes ago. Like, what are the things that make us feel at-home-ish? And, we talk about food, we talk about music, but people play such an important part in that.
Yeah.
And the more we're able to connect with one another, the more we can have those strong communities.
Yeah. And we thrive off connection, that we're meant to connect.
Right.
That's how we're not meant to be isolated. And we started off as communal peoples, right? Like we started off being in community, and then it became the American culture became very individualistic and very I, me. And, people got left behind. But yeah, we're meant to connect. So I grew up, like I mentioned before, in California, and people can't see me, and I normally don't start off by saying I'm Hispanic, but I'm Hispanic. My father's Mexican, my mom's Costa Rican. In California, I blended right in. Right. The minute I moved out to Washington State, you would get followed around in stores. You'd make sure, because this was still in the early 90s, and in Marysville there was hardly any Hispanic people. If we wanted to have some sense of our culture, and we would go to Monroe, to the Catholic Church in Monroe, right? Because there wasn't even Spanish Mass in Marysville when we first started living there. And I just remember people would be like, where are you from? And I would say, well, I was born in Arlington. And I still get that to this day. I had this conversation with someone at a grocery store. I won't mention where, but she asked me, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from Arlington. No, but really, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I was born in Arlington and I live here in Marysville. She's like, no, but where are you from? And it was like that video that everyone has come across. And I said, Arlington. I was born in Arlington, Washington at Cascade Hospital. I was the only girl born that day in 1975. I was like giving her my history. And then I said, where are you from? And she looked at me and she got offended. And she said, from here. Where else would I be from? And I said, oh my gosh. Well, where else would I be from?
Yeah.
So when we first moved back, it was hard to feel at-home-ish because the community wasn't very big. I remember the time my dad, he's a mechanic, and we were living in Everett at first, and he worked in Mill Creek, I think. And he would get followed every night to the driveway by a Mill Creek police officer. And one day my dad decided to say, why do you do this to me every day? And he said, you just match the description of someone we're looking for.
Every day?
And my dad said, every day?
Yeah.
I find that a little odd. And so my dad, even though his English is broken and he's a darker shade of brown than I am, and he knew that there was, if you'd fill out an application, they would ask him, are you sure you filled this out yourself or did someone help you? And he's a very intelligent man, and I owe my culture identity to him because even though my mom's Costa Rican, she immigrated when she was 10. So I identified more with the Mexican side, although I'm proud of both. And what I loved about him is that he always taught us, like, we might be different looking, but we have the same rights. We can do, you can do whatever you want with your life. You can go to school, you can become whatever you want to be, and so in him, he would speak out for himself, right? And advocate for himself. And it taught me a lot too on like where my life is going to go and, how important it is to make sure people don't feel singled out or left out or anything like that. So
one thing that I find interesting in the story you're just telling, I worked with a teacher in a different school district, but he was from the Caribbean islands.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing his accent, but I also remember being in some class around cultural identity. And it's like, well, don't ask someone where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, so I won't ask him where he's from. But then we were in a meeting, and this was a meeting about like cultural identity that the school district had pulled together. And one of the things that he mentioned was, he's like, I'm so offended that no one cares about where I'm from. And I was like, okay, hold on a second. It's like, because I was told not to ask, but now you're saying you want people to ask, And so I struggle with it sometimes because I appreciate that when you continued the story and you asked her where she's from, she seemed like she was offended. Like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're all from different places.
Right.
I mean, there's some people who, look a certain way who are known as the First Nations, the people who were here before, this area was colonized. But most people that we encounter are from somewhere else.
Yes.
And it's important for us to be able to acknowledge that. But I had a situation that was interesting. I was at an event here in Snohomish, and a woman came up to me. She's like, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know what tribe you're from? And I stood there for a second like, okay, how do I want to answer that? Because I don't know. I have no idea. I can trace my roots back to a small town called Elberton, Georgia. And then we moved to the metro Atlanta area, But I'm like, I have no idea of centuries ago or whatever point that people came over from some tribe in Africa. But the way she asked it really seemed like it came from a place of being curious, which is the theme of the last podcast or a couple episodes ago, whenever it was. But it was like, okay. And I feel like sometimes in conversations around microaggressions, macroaggressions, any of those types of things, I love asking that question more of like, so what do you mean? Which makes me want to ask more about what you were saying earlier. Because you mentioned the bystander training, and I don't know if I'm sure some of our audience members know what bystander training is, but could you please explain what it is?
Sure.
And also who was doing it? Because I thought you said the city was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, say more.
It was a partnership between the city of Arlington and the school district because it was the equity director through the school district. So, and I think the tribes were also involved somehow. So bystander training, I'm going to forget there's like the 5 Ds, right?
Oh,
it's like
right.
Distract, and then this isn't D, but it's like interrupt. Like basically it's like recognizing hate or harassment or things like that in public.
Right.
And if you're witnessing this, like asking the person if they need help or standing up against it, it's basically pushing back. So it was through a company called Holla Back, which I think it's changed names into something different. I know I'm looking it up for work right now with the ARC because I said we need to do it because it's been a few years since I have done that. And I think at that time it was because during COVID, there was a lot of people just because of social messaging about what country COVID came from. So then...
Oh, that part.
Yeah. So there was like a big movement about doing bystander trainings. But yeah, it was like it could help with anything because there was things that I had even heard from my kids coming home from school and just saying stuff that I was like, what do I do with this? Where do I go? I don't know what to do with some of the things that they're saying that their friends are saying or they're hearing on the playground. And if I would talk to, the principal or teachers or anything, they would talk about bullying. And I was like, but it's different than bullying. It's discrimination. It's harassment. And my kids were in elementary schools and this had been happening from like second grade, and this was almost like an echo or a ripple still from 9/11. And so we have some neighbors who are from the Middle East, and there was one second grader where the kids used to say, like, run away from him and say, he's got a bomb. Where's that coming from?
Right.
You know, like, these kids are in second grade. And so that kind of started my journey on, like, what do we do about this? Because this is if it's at the second graders, even below, I'm sure, first grade, kindergarten, what do we do? How do we speak up against this as parents, you know? And so I would talk to, because I knew some of the other kids' parents, and it was like, do you know that this is being said? And, you know, it's not fair to the one child who's left standing there in the middle of the field with no friends around him suddenly. And these kids are supposed to be friends. I think they thought they were being funny, but it's harmful and it grows from there, you know? So I do feel like COVID was a chance to like reflect on like for me, like what do I want to do? How do I want to be involved? How can I be more involved? But yeah, I can look up the bystander training if you want. Do you have it? Okay, so tell me the 5.
So the 5 Ds are direct, distract, delegate, delay, and disapprove.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was some videos that we watched about, you know, how to do those things. And I mean, some of the things that I wrote down that I've been thinking about today is some things that I learned is that it's okay to support one another and to question. Yeah. And even if it's a stranger and you're seeing something, just walking up and being like, are you okay? You know, I'm noticing something here. Like, can I be here for you? And to empower one another. And it's okay to be that voice that's just a little bit different. That's questioning, you know, like, what is happening here? What's going on? And sometimes that's enough to just cause people to reflect. Or other times there's a group mentality where everybody starts going, leave us alone. And then you're like, okay, see you later.
That happens too. Yeah. And I appreciate you talking about ways to interrupt or distract, because I know sometimes there are people, maybe they see something and the first thing they want to do is whip out their cell phone and record it. Or they want to be confrontational with this person who is potentially already being confrontational with someone else. And it's like, we don't know in those moments how much more jeopardy we're putting that person in or ourselves in. And so really being mindful about, no, we don't want this to continue. And we also don't want it to escalate. Yeah.
I would tell a story about the middle schoolers.
Tell the story.
That's why she's the voice of reason.
When I was waiting for one of my kids to come to the park, because one thing about me, I do not like school drop-off lines or pickup lines.
Oh, yeah.
Who
They're
does?
the worst.
Right.
That's
Nobody in the country, not one person I have met.
So fix that. You're on the school board now.
We're working on it. We have a plan. So I wait at the park. I park like a quarter mile away and make my kids walk, which is perfectly safe.
Now the park's going to be crowded.
Yeah, so exactly. It was crowded. One day I was sitting there and suddenly there was like 50 or 60 middle schoolers, which never happens when I'm waiting there. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're all coming together in the middle. And I'm looking in the cars of the other parents because this trend has caught on. And I'm like trying to catch the eyes of another adult, because sometimes I don't feel like I'm an adult either. And nobody was looking. Everybody's on their phones. And I'm like, oh no. So then they start moving this group of middle schoolers like into the trees. And I'm like, what are they doing? So I grab my cell phone and my keys. I'm just walking calmly towards them because I'm one mom and 60 middle schoolers. And I'm thinking, what am I going to say to them? Because just my presence of being a mom will probably interrupt, disrupt what they're doing. And then they all start pulling out their cell phones and they're aiming at one direction, which then I know there's going to be a tussle or a fight between a couple of kids. So I just walk up and I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? And like instantly dispersed, like they're gone. Everybody's running different directions.
Right.
And some of them stayed around to talk with us. But that was kind of an example of like, I think how the bystander training helped was it was like, it just kind of calmed down my mind. Because a lot of times if you don't have a plan of what you're going to say and there is something going on that's like heated or like really intense emotions of somebody else, I can easily absorb that, right? So I kind of have to like, that's where training like that helps a little bit, or even just having talked to other people who've been through experiences like Laurie. I mean, that thank you for sharing the story of the grocery store and your dad, because it helps to raise awareness of, like, if I see something like that, I'll be like, oh, I remember Laurie telling this story, and like, I want to be there for you. I can recognize it now, and that's such an important part of listening to each other and being responsive, and just being compassionate. And
I was listening to a podcast earlier. I'm a huge fan, not only of Wil's, but Lewis House on the School of Greatness. And there was a psychologist on there. They said, how do you connect with your clients, your patients, when they say something extremely outrageous and you don't necessarily agree with it? And in your education, they're wrong. And she said, you validate them. I don't have to agree with them. I just validate them. And she says, validating someone and someone's perspective is powerful because it is like a foundation for trust. Right. And so for me, that was really like, oh, that's an aha moment, because I do feel like I do that. But right now in today's climate, it's so politically divided. It's a us versus them. I have friends on both sides. I have friends who claim neither. They're so disappointed in what's going on that they're just like, I'm done. Right. But I can still have conversations, have respectful conversations. Now, if it gets downright where it's racist or just mean, of course, I cut it off and I'm like, I don't agree with that. Right.
Yeah.
But I can validate perspectives and keep a conversation going. And I think that's important. Validating is important. We're people of color. Someone that's not a person of color might not know what it's like to still to this day go into the grocery store and make sure, or not maybe a grocery store, but like a high-end place. And you make sure like they can see you put the items back, or, or that you're not touching too much, or that you look safe. Right. And you don't need to know that feeling to validate it and to understand that happens to this day, and that people aren't asking you to fix it in that sense where you make it right for them, but just when they share the story. And I've had this happen to me before where I'll share a story. Like one time I was in a Mexican bakery store and an older white gentleman turned around and said, what tribe are you from? And I said, oh, I'm not. I said, I'm not from the tribe. I said, I'm Hispanic. I'm Mexican and Costa Rican, but I was born in Arlington. It's like, oh, you just never know with you people, you all look the same.
Oh, no.
And I was like, sir, you are in our store. You know what I mean?
Wow.
You are like, there's a line of us, right? Like buying sweetbread because it was sweetbread time. And I remember I was so upset. I put it on Facebook, and I can't tell you how many of my white friends wanted me to understand him and not be so hard on him. That, he was from a different generation and he just didn't have the background. And, and it was like, no, you guys, I'm upset. And I have the right to be upset. I don't care what generation he was born in. He still said it and it was wrong, and there was that lack of validation. So I'm always really mindful, whether I understand it or I've been through it or not, what that person's feeling, that's their lived experience.
For sure.
And it needs to be validated,
So this puts me in teacher mode because there's a diagram that I often use in our trainings, and it's the developing cultural sensitivity model. Familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. See the nods. Awesome. Everybody don't see the nods, but also go ahead and explain it anyway. So the developing cultural sensitivity model, there are two major pains to it. One is ethnocentrism and the other is ethno-relativism. On the far end of the ethnocentrism side is denial, where you're denying that anybody could think differently, be differently, or have different needs than what you have. The next section under ethnocentrism is defending. And that's what you're saying right there, where, oh, I'm going to defend this person because of what they said and how they said it. But we're still not to that point of accepting that, hey, this is my lived experience. So we'll explain the rest of it. So it's defending, denying, then minimizing. Well, this only happened one time, or this only impacted a few people. And then moving into finally accepting that people have different needs, people have a different story. Then moving into adapting to where now we adapt how we interact with others and then finally into integration where it's just now a part of who we are and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how we walk people through thinking one way and not being able to embrace others, regardless of your religious, political, social ideologies. Because I have people who are very conservative leaning that can't see the other side.
Yeah.
I have people who are very liberal or progressive leaning that can't see the other side. And it's like, how can we accept that we are different and have conversations around it? Unless you're trying to hurt or harm somebody, because then it's like, no, we're done.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that story fits right into that model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you.
That sounds a lot like the dignity scale. I don't know
Okay.
if you've seen that. It's very similar wording to that, but maybe we should break it to the listeners that I am white.
Oh, yeah, because they don't know that.
What?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
they might be able to tell from my voice and my stories.
Spoiler alert.
I think it's probably pretty clear.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. We're all coming out with our identities here now.
Yes, we are.
I am African American. But if you've listened to this podcast, y'all know that. So. Oh my goodness. So we have so much fun on here.
Yeah.
But, I think that brings up an interesting point as well, because when we talk about At-Homish and creating spaces where we belong, has there been a time in either of your lives where you didn't feel like you belonged somewhere?
One time.
One time.
One time at band
One
camp.
time. That's a Fuji song.
Oh my gosh.
La, la, la.
Well, I mean, without like divulging too much about my children's,
Okay.
upbringing or whatever, but I do have kids with special needs.
Okay.
And so there are some behaviors that are like not socially acceptable, to most people, but they're part of the human experience. It's just that people don't see it all the time. Right. And so I'm just going to say that like probably one of the hardest times in any human's life is when you're a preschooler. And so my child struggled in pre-verbal because they speak now. So no language, a very low understanding of, growing up. It's like a part of your development, right? So there would be some behaviors like when I would drop off at school, very loud, screaming, things like that. And so like the looks from other parents, when you're dropping off at a public school and there's like hundreds of kids, hundreds of parents, and your child is the one interrupting the noise space of everybody and, screaming, and the teacher's trying to take care of it. And everybody is just kind of looking like, what's wrong with you? What, how are you raising that child? Because it's not a visible disability. He's walking, he's, talking or he's kind of talking. But I guess this is like belonging and not belonging at the same time, because there was one time I had, a little baby I was carrying, dropped him off. He was screaming and I just lost it. I went around the corner in the school by the door and I like just bawled. I held on to my baby and I was just standing against the wall, just like crying. I didn't know what to do. And another adult had walked by and said under their breath, like, discipline, like I needed to discipline him.
Wow.
And that was why. And I knew that was not right. And I just felt like, what am I doing here? Everybody's looking at us like we're the weirdos. And then one school employee came up and she because my head is down, I'm crying.
Yeah.
And she took my face in her hands and she was like, he's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm here for you. And actually that moment kind of started to turn things around for me. Like, okay, I can do this, like the resilience factor, right? But I think that, having any sort of disability, you're either yourself or a family member with such, it can feel really isolating sometimes. And I feel like there's kind of a lack of understanding maybe, or like wanting to hold it at arm's length because, that might affect them somehow or, it's kind of looked down upon sometimes. And that's where a lot of like advocacy work comes in handy and raising awareness. But those years were pretty difficult to feel like we belonged.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Did it inspire you to create spaces for other people as time went on?
Yeah.
I know like your lived experiences will usually make you Like, I don't want someone to feel this way. And then you.
Okay. So yes, I'll bring it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just was curious.
It's good. That's a good question, Laurie. You have the really good questions. So now that I'm on the school board, last year I asked if we could start a special education advisory council, because there's advisory councils for many things, which is the advisory councils in our school district are made up of parents, school staff, and community members, and they advise, on certain things, certain departments at the district office. So we had one for many of the cabinet members, but not special education. So I was like, why don't we have, can we have one for special education? Because parents of the students in special education can often feel isolated. I've heard this from many parents, and I experienced it myself. So we did. This was the first year the school district started the Special Education Advisory Council, and they had a parent and 2 staff members come and talk about how it went. And again, I'm crying, I'm bawling as this parent is sharing about how empowered it made her feel. And she didn't feel so isolated because she had connections then with staff and district office, and she felt empowered, and she felt like she could share information with other parents. So she felt connected, and then was encouraged to go and reach out to help more parents feel connected and more students be connected and be a part of, the whole student body, not isolated from each other or anyone, and the whole district. And it just felt really beautiful. And I hope that it grows and continues. But I love going from crying on the wall with my baby to that was
creating something
really
for other families. I think that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. I just think so highly of Erica. So
me too.
She's a rock star. Yeah. She's a rock star. She's one of my favorite. Yeah.
I didn't think
she's one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
I thought about this a lot. And as much as I love my parents, and I know that they loved me as best as they could, we're actually estranged. So I don't have any contact with them. It's been quite a few years, college, Isabel's college, none of those milestones they weren't there for. And it's something that over time you get used to. There's still pain there, but you get used to. For me, losing I guess that would be my natal family, right? My primary family, because I'm divorced and it's just Isabel and I, and going through COVID alone and doing lots of things alone. I do have cousins that I'm close to, but when you're talking about a mom and a dad and siblings, none of them were and I respect that. I kind of I've shared my history with Erica in class and Megan, and it was just a pattern with my mom, and I know it's from her upbringing, right? But the hot and cold communication, no communication. And then one day I was like, okay, I have a daughter who's watching this pattern, and this is not healthy. So the last time she stopped talking to me, I just stopped chasing her to accept me. With that came a lot of rebuilding, because, when you lose your primary family, it's what is your identity, right? It was a real big identity crisis for me.
Right.
And anyone going through this, I think they would understand, because now you don't have family dinners. You don't have traditions that you do. You don't call people up when you have a bad day, things like that. But I knew by not chasing after that anymore, knowing that it wasn't going to be different, I was creating something better for my daughter, right?
Yeah.
And so that was probably the first time I didn't feel, it was the most impactful not feeling at-homish moment in my life, because I had to rebuild myself and figure out, who am I now? And I actually am grateful for that experience, because it really changed my points of views on the way I see life, the way I see community, the way I'm welcoming towards others, because I definitely never want anyone to feel that from me, or if they're going through that, to know that there are people that do care and can love them unconditionally and accept them.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank
you for sharing that. Yeah.
Trying not to cry.
You did a good
because
job.
It's a really hard conversation to have, right? Because it is my family, and culturally that's my family. We're brought up to respect them, and but at some point you can still love them, but you don't have to accept that generational trauma that's getting passed down, right?
Absolutely.
And for me, it was a defining moment. Like, do I want to continue this and pass it on to Isabel? Or do I want to just not do that anymore and see what happens? And so we've been doing pretty well, I would say.
Yeah.
You
Awesome.
find your community. It's one of the things my therapist said is she was like, no one can meet all your needs 100% of the time. So you have to go out and find different people that meet the different needs. Your social connection, do you like hiking? Do you like running? Do you like, the academics? There's always going to be someone to fill that, right? Even companionship. She said, so you need to go out there and do that. And that's when I started getting more active. I did the Latino Leadership Council with the Greater Marysville Tulalip Chamber of Commerce. My internships I did with Millennium Ministries, and I've stayed on board with them. I'm a board member now with them. But it was because you have to, it's very isolating to be abandoned, right? Those are wounds it's a wound. And the only way to heal it is finding the people. Now you have that choice of what people you're going to accept in your life. And the right ones will come. And so anyone that's going through that, the right ones will come. It'll take time. It hurts, a lot of ugly crying, but you'll come out of it and the right people will be in your community. Like I have Erica, I have you, like I've met all these amazing people, but it took a huge wound to get me to expose myself even more and to go out into the community and find people that I could feel at home with, that would accept me for who I am.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. One thing that you mentioned that kind of hit me was learning about yourself. So you're talking about, finding the people who will fill the certain needs. So running, hiking, things like that. But if you don't know about yourself, it's like, okay, so then you need to learn. What do I like to do? And sticking yourself out there. Right. And I think that's one thing that I think about with when I was 18, it's just like another quick story.
Okay.
And I was still in the cult, right? And so I was living in the cult in the basement of a church building in Everett. And I never really felt like I belonged at the cult. Part of it was just because you're so like trapped there, right? And I just wanted to get out. But there was one day where I took my car out and wasn't going to go back. There was a tree here along Highway 2 between At-Homish and Monroe that I was going to drive my car into. And that was the plan. And I drove by it. I kept passing it, okay, next time I'm going to drive out, into that tree. And I was getting frustrated with myself because I was chickening out kind of. And then I was like, you know what? I haven't even given myself a chance. I don't know anything about myself. And I was like, what is going to happen if I go back to this cult and I am just purely myself? Like, are they going to beat me? Like, I mean, they already had. So it's like more, I don't really care what happens to me. Obviously, I'm going to come back to this tree if it gets worse. But I just thought, I'm taking it to a dark place right now. I understand that. But I'm like, it's part of, I guess, learning about yourself and finding your community, because that wasn't it for me. And I recognized that like I knew nothing about myself and everything had been stifled. And I was like, I'm going to search for, do I like to cook? Do I like to draw? What do I like to do? I don't even know. I feel like it's a constant journey of self-discovery, but sometimes I'll drive by that tree and now I've called it the tree of life.
Oh,
and so
the
tree is still there. Yeah, because it's part of the story. But whenever anybody talks about that, I just think about the importance of learning about yourself and really being like, okay, because it does help you find connections with other people. And, you find that like cohesive, you're supporting them, they're supporting you. And that's what community is.
Yeah. And you can be your authentic self. I'm so big on that now, just growing up with a lot of different conditioning, cultural conditioning, social conditioning. But when you give yourself the ability to be your authentic self, gosh, that's so freeing. And it attracts more people. It not only brings more people into your life, but it gives others the ability to be like, hey, they can do that. I can too. It empowers other people. I think a lot of the struggle we see in society is because there's so many people that are living lives that they don't want to live. they're living them to make someone proud or to make them happy or to not go against the grain, and I feel like a lot of the social and mental health struggles that we see is because so many people aren't allowing themselves to live their authentic self.
Absolutely.
I do recognize that there are situations where you do need, medical intervention and, psychologist and therapy. But when I reflect back on my life, a huge part of me being so unhappy, I was also, in a very abusive relationship for 6 years after my divorce. And that was just the inability to know my worth and know my value and be my authentic self. So I attribute, if we gave people that gift, give it to ourselves so that others can see it too and want to give that gift to themselves, we'd probably be in a lot better space, I think. It's my perspective.
Agree. Yeah. I mean, when we're able to, that's what I often say inclusion is all about. When we're able to truly be ourselves and be safe and valued for that and not have to worry, not have to put on a mask and pretend that we're somebody or something else.
Yeah, to fit whose narrative.
I heard this awesome thing from a student last year that said belonging is the opposite of fitting in.
Yes.
And I was like,
I love that.
Yes. And it wasn't from them. Do you know who said that? I don't remember.
I don't
It was a quote from somebody.
I remember hearing a couple of years back.
I was like, that is so, I'm never going to forget that. That's like we say, core memory.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. But also, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge the story that you just shared, because I've had similar thoughts with some different situations in my life. Not going to dig into it right now, but I feel there's great power for us because we know that there are people in dark places. And so for us to go into those dark places and let people know that they're not alone.
Yeah. For sure.
We can bring them back. At-Homish.
Yeah. And so I also am involved with the Snohomish County Youth Suicide Prevention Task Force because it affects people differently, right? Everybody is different. But for me, I became very comfortable with thoughts like that. And so for years, it's just like a pattern, right? Like I can always go back to that. You know what I mean? And it was like for 10 years. And then I remember one day I was driving. I guess I do a lot of thinking while I was driving. And I was like, wow, I haven't actually had that thought in like a long time. And so it became easier to have more things to live for than not. And I think it's just important to, like Laurie was saying, talk about it and empower other people. And I do try to let people know, like, I'm not afraid of the dark, you know? So
don't be afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
Could you though, while we got a few moments left here, share some resources for people who may be having some of those thoughts?
For sure. I mean, there's the 988 phone number, which is being a little bit restricted now, but there's, and then NAMI, there's the VOA of Western Washington, which is what I was thinking, but there's also like rapid response, crisis teams. What I tell people is think about what you're already involved in, and there will be a resource there. So someone had called me and was talking about a struggle in their life and just kind of offhandedly mentioned that they were at community college. And it's like, there is resources there.
Absolutely.
So if there's a community college, and I think that one thing I try to encourage people is that someone wants to hear what you have to say.
Right.
You're not going to go there and they're going to be like, no, I don't want to help. It might take you talking to one person, they'll send you to somebody else, but they want to hear what you have to say. They want to see you. And I feel like that was an important thing for me to hear. And I think that is the importance of belonging, right?
Right.
Is if you go to the library, librarians are like some of the best people on earth. I admire them so much. My grandma was a librarian, so I feel safe there. It's, think about, where do you feel safe? Even a little shred of safety, there will be someone there who you can talk to.
And I think it's important to also share your experiences. Like, with DV, there's a lot of shame. And so a lot of victims keep quiet and they don't talk about it. I've been really forward in like my experience, right? I don't tell everyone, but some that are closest to me, they're aware. But there are people that will know and they'll say, hey, can I talk to you? My friend's going through this. What do you think? Or I'm going through this, and because you share your story, it's so important to share your story and take away that stigma, take away that shame. It opens the opportunity, like your experience, mine or anyone who's gone through an adversity. Once you take away that shame, because there's nothing shameful about it. It's something that happened to you. It wasn't your fault. Other people hear about it. It moves them to either support causes that provide resources, or it allows them also the opportunity to come forward and share their story. And it's that I'm a huge advocate for we listen and we don't judge, right? Because I had people look at me and say, well, you don't look like you would be a DV victim. And I said, well, what would that look like to you?
Right.
I'm always putting it back on them, like you're just so smart and you look like you've got it together. Like you're all so put together. I just would have never imagined that you would, that would be your experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a educational moment because suicide, self-harm, DV, all kinds of adversities, homelessness, it can affect everyone,
So now to take me right back to the overcoming adversity conversations that we're having, because there's just a lot going on in the world right now.
I would say too, sorry, have you heard of QPR? Question, persuade, and then refer, which is suicide training.
Right,
so even if you don't think that you will use it, I would encourage people to seek out that training because it helps you recognize behaviors and things, and then you can question and just really kind of like circle around our people.
Yeah. On the note of circling around, because we know we're about to wrap up here soon because we've been talking for a minute. And I love that.
There's so much to say.
There's so much to say. We might have to come back and to talk some more about stuff. Right. But
the saga continues.
But, I when I take notes over here, try to figure out like some of the key learnings that we've come around. And I love that there were like so many key topics, but then also trainings and resources. And so between the bystander training or the QPR training, but then also some of the topics of knowing yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, like where do you even start? You're just constantly trying to mirror someone else. I love what you were saying early on about anyone can serve, because there's so many opportunities out there. Find knowing yourself and knowing what you're interested in can be that gateway to being able to serve in a community. And when you're serving in the community, the power of connection, that you're now connected with people who have perhaps similar stories or have a need, and they know that there's someone there for them. I also love the concept of letting go and create better.
Yeah.
Because we tend to hold on to things because this is what I've always known. This is what I was brought up with. And it's like, let go of that. And there can be better out there. And then also not being afraid of having those conversations that take us into those dark places, because that's where some people are wandering and trying to find their way, and then get them back to that safe place. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could like.
So what happens when you get two graduates from the Human Services Department from Western Washington University?
You're lucky we didn't create a PowerPoint.
We can do that.
Yeah, you're so fresh out of school.
Extra credit for our PowerPoint.
Maybe we'll attach it in the link. That's your homework. Create the PowerPoint. It'll be a resource for our listeners. One of the requirements, if you're working with me, I love listening to music in the office.
I'm prepared.
Oh, yeah.
We already talked about this.
We did our homework.
Yeah, we came prepared for this one.
I'm not surprised that you're prepared. If you were to walk into a room, and I love the depth of our conversation here, right? Because we talked about safe place, dark place, being real, being authentic. Because people ask me for my playlist sometimes. I'm like, my playlist ain't PG. I don't know if you want my full playlist, because there's something. I mean, it's not all that, but there are some songs which is like that song comes on, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm good now. But if you were to walk into a room and there was a theme song that would play, this is your song. This is not. I'm worried about what somebody's thinking. No, this is you. What would your song be? She laughs.
It might be a little scream rock if it's walking into my kids' messy room. But I'm going to say in general.
Right.
The first song that came to my mind was Rock Steady by Aretha Franklin.
Ooh,
I just love Aretha, a huge fan. So I don't know if you want me to say my why on that one.
Please.
So we were kind of talking about this in the car, but that song, Rock Steady, it's not like, if you look at the words, the lyrics aren't really about anything. It's about like, sit yourself in the car and you take a ride. And it's just about being like rock steady, just being smooth. And, it's a funky song. And there's like brass and there's an organ. And so it makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. But it was written by Aretha during the time of civil rights movements. And so it's like in the middle of this album that is about all those issues going on. And then she's got Rock Steady. And people are like, why did you put that one in there? But it's about being, rock steady and still being yourself in spite of, showing resilience in spite of adversity. And I thought that was really cool. Like you can just, and I think it just would set the vibe, when you walk in the room, it's like,
right.
You can just take a breath, Oh
yeah. It's all about setting the vibe.
Yeah.
It's a great song. She played it for me in the car because I hadn't heard it before.
Right.
So she played it and I'm like, okay, I dig this. I love this. It's a good song. So mine would be, I'm going to keep to my roots here. Selena, the OG Selena.
Yeah.
Selena Quintanilla Perez. Bidi Bidi Bom Bom.
Yes, I
love that song. It's just happy. It's the minute it starts playing, it just puts you in a mood. It's like I was telling Erica in the car. It kind of reminds me of that saying that you'll never see me eating tacos and crying at the same time. It's the same with that song. If I'm sad, like that song will pick me up. And I just love her too. I love everything that she represented because she really paved the way for a lot of Mexican-Americans in our country, because at one point you picked one or the other when you wanted to be an artist, right? And she primarily sang in Spanish first. And then she did her breakout album in English before that tragedy. And she would joke and say, people are going to wonder how I learned English so fast because, everyone assumed that she didn't and that she was Mexican, but she was Mexican-American from Texas. And I felt like she gave us a space because I'm close to that age, that.
Right.
And, at that time, we were like an unseen part of the community, the population, it's, and she gave us a space and biculturalism, she represented that. You can embrace both and love both and it's cool. It's okay. And so, so I love that song for the happy beat and it puts me in a good mood. And then for what it represents, to the Mexican-American community, the Latinx community. And then the other song I love, and that's just when I'm going to start working. And when I mean work, I mean the community work is Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us. Like when it's going to go down, like that's the song. And I don't think people realize how powerful that movement was. Because that's really the song of the revolution. And I don't think people got that. But those of us that did understood the assignment. So.
Right. Go back to episode 15 from last season. And I talk about Not Like Us. Yeah, because that was just over a year ago. And that song is still like when it comes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is probably the third or fourth time I think that Kendrick Lamar has been mentioned on this podcast. So if you listen and you know Kendrick, I'm just saying, have him reach out to a brother, get him on the podcast. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
I greatly appreciate this. I know we, talked for a while and it wasn't really that long about, trying to get you on, but it was like, okay, I need to schedule between the two of you and me and Trent. And it's just like, whew. But we made it happen. And I'm so glad that we did.
It's great.
I want to do a special thank you for all the listeners who stuck through, because this is probably one of our longer episodes. But I mean, there was not a dull moment in there. The conversation kept going. I want to thank you all for continuing to support the merch. I see you out there. Continue to listen, like, follow, comment, tag, all the social media things that you do with the podcast so that we know you're listening, because there's just so much out there that we can learn from each other in our stories, in our life journeys, and something that helps us continue to wise up and rise up. Peace out.